Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime, the Colorado Buffaloes continue to crush it in the transfer portal, landing another commitment from wide receiver Will Shepard heading over from Vanderbilt. This was one of the top wide receivers available in the transfer portal, had an absurd offer list. Auburn, LSU, most of the SEC wanted Will Shepard and his services in Colorado, able to land a true difference maker on the offensive side of the football. And you look at the guys that Colorado is bringing in the transfer portal this cycle, proven talent at the Power 5 level, and Will Shepard certainly fits that bill. Going to hop into Will Shepard, talk a little bit about what his game is, what he's going to bring to this Colorado offense, and then we'll talk about a loaded visitor week as well for the Buffs. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a sincere thank you to the Colorado fans. This has been a program that's been a blast to talk about all the additions to this roster heading into the 2024 year. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys has been absolutely amazing. Some of our best performing episodes have been Colorado talk in the transfer portal. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Will Shepard. And the first thing that really jumps off the page about Will Shepard is the proven production at the SEC level in an offense at Vanderbilt that, I mean, the nicest way to put it was it wasn't great, right? And if there are good things were happening in that Vanderbilt offense, a lot of it had to do with Will Shepard and having the football in his hands. Last 3 years at Vanderbilt, over 150 catches, over 2,000 yards. And here's the number that jumps out the stats: 21 touchdowns. And this is a guy that's really good in the red zone, and the kind of player he is really fits what Colorado wants in that wide receiver room. Where you look at some of the guys that they have, Travis Hunter, twitched up, Jimmy Horn, a guy that can separate, work underneath, really good with the football in their hands. What they're getting in Will Shepard is a guy on the boundary with a phenomenal frame at 6'3", 200 pounds, that's an extremely polished route runner, and that can kind of do it all from the boundary. And so you look at this wide receiver room and how teams are going to have to deal with all the different playmakers on this Colorado offense. It's going to be a very tough task. And you start looking at it. Travis Hunter, not much to say. I mean, one of the specialists, most special, I should say, athletes in all of college football. Jimmy Horn, one of the more underrated receivers at the Power 5 level. You have true freshman Draylon Miller coming in, who is going to be a guy that's going to play early. He's going to play often. We just talked about him a couple days ago. You have a guy like Amarian Miller, who has flashed some serious ball skills at time. Now you bring in Will Shepard, one of the most productive receivers in the SEC the last couple of years. In the running back room, you have Dylan Edwards, arguably the fastest player on this Colorado roster, and Alton McCaskill, who's hopefully getting healthy. There are so many different playmakers that are surrounding one of the more talented quarterbacks that we see in the country in Sheduer Sanders. And they've addressed this offensive line. It's going to take meaningful steps in the right direction in 2024. This is an offense that when you start looking at it, it makes sense that Will Shepard wants to come to Boulder, not only because of Coach Prime, but this offense in general with a good offensive line can be one of the better units that we see in the Big 12 next year. And so you add Will Shepard, really, really excited to see what Will Shepard can bring to an already loaded Colorado offense. And you take a look at the guys in the transfer portal, and this is, I think, the biggest deal that we've talked about is that this transfer portal cycle just feels different from last year in terms of the quality of players that you're bringing in, especially on the offensive line. I mean, a guy like Matthew Bedford, a ton of starting experience in the Big Ten Power 5 conference. A guy like Shimon Meder, who is, I mean, freakishly gifted in terms of traits and was really productive at Cincinnati last year. Khalil Benson, another guy with a ton of starting experience at the Power 5 level. Justin Mayers, an offensive lineman who most Power 5 programs wanted and was one of the more coveted offensive linemen from that group of 5 level. Terrell Timmons Jr., I think a wide receiver with a ton of upside, averaged almost 20 yards per catch at NC State. And then you keep scrolling. Tyler Johnson, an all Big 12 performer on the offensive line from Houston last year, and a guy like Yakiri Walker who played over 900 snaps for UConn last year. The guys that Colorado is bringing in the transfer portal this year are difference makers. And the quality of player, it's just much better, especially on that offensive line, which has to get Colorado fans extremely excited. And you check the transfer portal rankings. And last year, Colorado was first in transfer portal rankings because of the quantity that they brought in. This is a year where, yeah, they're bringing in a lot of guys, but the quality is there too, right? 2 4-stars, 5 3-stars. The average ranking is an 88.43, which is one of the higher marks that you see across the country. Not only are you bringing in the quantity this year, it's also the quality. And that's, I think, really the difference maker and what you're going to see on the football field for Colorado in 2024. And I want to get to what's, I think, a little bit more of the exciting conversation. And that is, who is Colorado bringing in this weekend and some more transfer portal targets? I mean, Coach Prime has said is we're not slowing down anytime soon. Last weekend was dedicated to the offensive line, and they absolutely crushed it, bringing in a ton of guys with starting experience. This weekend, he says focused on the defensive line. First guy I want to talk about, Chris McClellan, coming from Florida, and this has been a guy that's been on my radar since his true freshman year. And he's a guy that hasn't fully reached his potential yet in only 2 years of college football, but there was a reason he was a top 100 national recruit, and you see the flashes for him at the Florida Gators. And we talk about the type of bodies we want Colorado to bring in on the defensive line. 6'3", 320 pounds, certainly checks that box in terms of the bodies that we want to see up front for the Colorado Buffaloes. Struggled stopping the run last year. A guy like Chris McClellan, who's 6'3", 320 pounds, certainly going to help that. And you take a look at what he did for Florida and kind of limited snaps for the Gators last year in the SEC Conference. I mean, 8 quarterback hurries, 11 run stops. And again, what I think excites me the most about a guy like Chris McClellan is there is a lot of meat on the bone in terms of what he can be given the right development. They get Chris McClellan in there. Not only he's going to add depth to that defensive line, I think he adds some really high-end star power on that defensive line. And if he does kind of see that progression through, I mean, difference maker on the inside of that defensive line. Another guy that just this afternoon announced he's going to be visiting Colorado as well, Chidozie Nwankwu. And this is a guy that we talked about him for a few other programs, absolute fire hydrant, right? He's not going to jump off the page in terms of the height and weight, 5'11", 295, plays with low pad level, extremely good in the run game. Couple things that stuck out to me when I was buzzing the film and looking at the numbers: 15 run stops, extremely high mark for an interior defensive lineman, average depth of tackle in terms of when he's tackling the ball carry on the football field, 0.7 yards down the field. He's making plays at or behind the line of scrimmage consistently, and you see that in his game. I mean, he wins at the point of attack. He can stack and shed blocks. He can hold up to the double teams. And this is a guy that's not necessarily going to stuff the stat sheet. He's not going to have 10.5 sacks and 15 tackles for a loss for Colorado next year, but he's a guy that is going to make the defense around him at a much higher level. And those are the guys that Colorado wants in, like the gritty guys who are getting it done at the point of attack. Chidozie Nwankwu, certainly a guy to keep your eyes on. Probably my most favorite visitors for Colorado this weekend. We'll see what comes out of it. It does seem like any transfer that touches down in Boulder, shakes Coach Prime's hand, gets in the office, sees the mountains, it sounds like they're committing to Boulder. Will Shepard, massive get. Surely more to come. Again, Colorado fans, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. This has been just an absolute blast to cover. The amount of support you guys have shown means a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content and enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.